Hello, everyone. I want to start by asking you a simple question. What do you do when life punches you in the face? Because it will. It doesn't matter how smart you are, how talented you are, how much money you have, life will eventually test you. Not to destroy you, but to reveal who you really are underneath all the titles, all the achievements, and all the nice Instagram posts. See, we often confuse mental strength with toughness, but there's a difference. Toughness is rigid, it resists, it fights, it pretends it's fine. Mental strength, on the other hand, is resilience. It's flexible, it bends, but doesn't break. It adapts, it learns, it grows. We often grow up believing that strength means being tough, that to be mentally strong, we must suppress emotions, hide vulnerability, and power through adversity without flinching. But that's not strength. That's armor. And over time, armor becomes heavy. It becomes isolating. True mental strength isn't about pretending you're fine when you're not. It's about having the courage to face reality as it is, not as you wish it to be. Toughness is rigid. It's the clenched jaw, the forced smile, the silent suffering. It's pushing forward while ignoring the warning signs in your mind and body. It's telling yourself that rest is weakness, that asking for help is defeat. It looks strong from the outside, but inside it's brittle. And anything brittle, when tested enough times, eventually cracks. Mental strength, on the other hand, is flexible. It's not about pretending you don't feel pain. It's about learning how to respond to that pain in a healthy and constructive way. It's understanding that emotions aren't enemies to be defeated, but signals to be heard. Resilience, the real core of mental strength, isn't about bouncing back to exactly who you were before a setback. It's about coming back wiser, more aware, more grounded. I've met people who seem unshakable on the surface, stoic, composed, always fine, but when life truly tests them, they crumble. Why? Because they never developed the internal tools to process pain or uncertainty. They were taught to power through everything. But powering through without processing is just emotional avoidance dressed as discipline. Being mentally strong means embracing discomfort, not avoiding it. It's sitting with your fear long enough to understand where it comes from. It's recognizing anxiety not as a flaw, but as a messenger. It's having the presence of mind to pause when every part of you wants to react. Strength lives in that pause, in that breath, in that space between stimulus and response. Mentally strong people aren't unaffected by hardship. They just relate to it differently. They've trained themselves to see struggle as a season, not a sentence. They don't catastrophize every setback, nor do they define themselves by failure. Instead, they look at each challenge as an opportunity to grow. They ask questions like, what can this teach me? Or how can I use this to build something better? And here's the most powerful truth. Mental strength is not a trait you're born with. It's a practice, a muscle, something you build over time by choosing to show up again and again, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. We have to stop glorifying the idea of being tough, because toughness alone doesn't make us better leaders, better partners, or better people. What does? Compassion, self-awareness, the willingness to face our inner world with honesty and humility. That's what creates real endurance, not the absence of emotion, but the mastery of it. In the end, mental strength is not about how you appear. It's about who you choose to be when no one is watching. It's in the quiet decisions, the honest conversations, the moment you choose reflection over reaction. Toughness might help you survive, but mental strength is what helps you thrive. And there's a world of difference between the two. When we talk about mental strength, one of the most foundational elements, yet often the most overlooked, is knowing your why. Your why is your purpose, your reason, your internal compass. It's what gives meaning to your actions and direction to your life. Without it, we're like ships adrift in the ocean, busy, constantly moving, but going nowhere with intention. In difficult times, when everything feels like it's falling apart, most people ask, how do I get through this? But mentally strong people ask a different question: why is this worth going through? That small shift changes everything, because when you know why you're struggling, the struggle starts to feel less like suffering and more like progress. Purpose doesn't remove pain. It gives pain a reason to exist. Think of any elite athlete, successful entrepreneur, or resilient leader. They all have something in common: clarity of purpose. They don't just wake up and hustle because someone told them to. They're not chasing external validation or trying to meet other people's expectations. They are grounded in something deeper, whether it's a mission, a cause, a vision, or simply the desire to become a better version of themselves. They have a reason that fuels them. And when that reason is strong enough, it sustains them through storms that would make others quit. Mental strength is not about being the most disciplined person in the room. It's about being the most connected to your purpose. Discipline without direction burns you out. But when you're connected to your why, even the hardest days feel like they have value. You begin to welcome the grind because you know what it's building. You're becoming. But let's be honest, finding your why isn't always easy. It requires stillness in a world that rewards distraction. It asks you to stop chasing what's shiny and start listening to what's true. It asks uncomfortable questions. Am I doing this because I believe in it or because I'm afraid to fail? Am I pursuing success or am I just afraid of being average? These questions strip away the noise, and sometimes the answers aren't what you want to hear, but they're exactly what you need. The good news, you don't need to have your entire purpose figured out today. You just need to start paying attention. What gives you energy even when you're tired? What problems in the world do you feel called to solve? What kind of impact do you want to leave behind? These aren't questions you answer in a day. They're questions you live into. Once you begin to uncover your why, you'll notice something remarkable. You stop comparing yourself so much to others. You stop measuring your progress against someone else's timeline because you realize you're not in their race. You're in yours. That's where mental strength truly begins, not in pushing harder, but in knowing what you're pushing for. In moments of doubt, your why becomes your anchor. In moments of temptation, it becomes your filter. In moments of pain, it becomes your fuel. It turns resistance into resilience and turns obstacles into stepping stones. And here's the beautiful part. When you live with a strong why, you don't just inspire yourself, you inspire others. People can feel when you're aligned with something deeper. It's contagious. It creates trust, loyalty, and a sense of meaning, not just for you, but for everyone around you. So if you want to become mentally strong, well, don't start with tactics. Don't start with routines or motivational quotes. Start by asking the hard, honest question, why am I doing this? And don't stop asking until the answer moves you. We live in a world that celebrates independence. From a young age, we're taught to stand on our own, figure things out ourselves, and not rely on others too much. The cultural narrative is clear. Needing help is weakness, and strength means doing it alone. But that story is not only false, it's dangerous. Because the truth is, real mental strength doesn't come from isolation, it comes from connection. There's a reason the strongest people aren't always the loudest in the room. They're not the ones putting on a brave face or pretending everything is fine. The strongest people are often the ones who have the courage to say, I'm struggling, or I can't do this alone. It takes an extraordinary amount of inner security to admit vulnerability. That's not weakness, that's strength in its most honest form. When you isolate yourself, you deny yourself the very thing that makes us human: relationship. No one was built to carry the weight of life entirely on their own. Even the most resilient individuals draw their strength from community, from support systems, from knowing that someone is walking beside them. It's in those moments when you open up, when you share, when you ask for help, that your strength is truly tested and deepened. Mentally strong people understand that connection isn't just emotional, it's strategic. It keeps them grounded, it gives them perspective, it helps them process their thoughts, regulate their emotions, and stay aligned with their values. A conversation with someone you trust can do more for your mental health than 1,000 internal pep talks. It brings clarity, brings peace, it reminds you that you're not alone in the fight. Too often we think we have to have it all figured out before we reach out, but the truth is, no one has it all figured out. And when you pretend to be okay when you're not, you rob yourself of the very empathy and support that could help you heal. Ironically, it's in those moments of honest connection that transformation happens. The act of being seen and accepted, even in your most vulnerable state, has the power to rebuild your sense of self. Now, not every connection is equal. This is important. Being mentally strong doesn't mean opening up to everyone. It means being wise about who you let into your inner circle. Mentally strong people are selective about their energy. They surround themselves with those who lift them, challenge them, and hold them accountable, not with those who drain them or feed negativity. It's not just about having support, it's about having the right kind of support. And connection goes both ways. Part of building mental strength is being that person for someone else too. When you hold space for others, when you show up without judgment, when you remind someone else that they matter, you reinforce those truths in yourself. Giving support strengthens you just as much as receiving it. There's a quiet kind of strength in saying, I need you right now. There's a brave kind of strength in letting someone see the parts of you that are still healing. And there's a powerful kind of strength in knowing that being strong doesn't mean being alone. In the end, mental strength isn't built in solitude, it's built in connection, in the people who walk beside you, in the hands that catch you when you fall, in the voices that say, you don't have to do this by yourself. Because true strength isn't about proving you can stand alone. It's about having the courage to let someone stand with you. Failure has a way of making us question everything, our abilities, our choices, sometimes even our worth. Society often paints failure as the opposite of success, something to avoid at all costs. We're taught to hide it, to be ashamed of it, to pretend it never happened. But the truth is, mentally strong people see failure differently. They don't see it as the end of the road. They see it as part of the journey, not something that defines them, but something that refines them. Failure isn't the enemy. Our fear of it is. That fear is what keeps us playing small, staying comfortable, avoiding risks. But you can't grow inside your comfort zone. Growth requires stretching, reaching, stumbling, and yes, failing. The people we admire most, the innovators, the athletes, the leaders, they've all failed, not once, but many times. The difference is they didn't let failure stop them. They used it. Mentally strong people understand that failure is feedback, it's information. It shows you what didn't work so you can figure out what might. It reveals gaps in your strategy, flaws in your thinking, or even deeper truths about your motivations. But you only get that insight if you're willing to face it head on rather than running from it or pretending it didn't hurt. Failure also builds humility, and humility is a core part of mental strength. It teaches you that no matter how much you know, there's always more to learn. It reminds you that you're human just like everyone else. And that's not something to be ashamed of, it's something to embrace. You don't have to be perfect to be worthy, you just have to be willing to grow. But failure also does something else. It builds emotional resilience. Every time you fall and get back up, your threshold for discomfort expands. You start to realize that setbacks won't break you. Disappointment won't define you. Rejection won't ruin you. And when you truly internalize that, you become far more dangerous, not in an aggressive sense, but in the sense that you're no longer easily shaken. You become rooted, unstoppable. And let's be clear, being mentally strong doesn't mean you enjoy failure. It still stings, it still hurts your pride, but you stop seeing it as a signal to quit. Instead, it becomes a call to adapt, to shift, to refine your approach. You begin to understand that every person who has done something meaningful has failed repeatedly. It's not a detour from the path to success, it is the path. You also become more compassionate toward yourself and others. When you've failed and grown through it, you stop judging others so harshly. You start seeing their struggles with more empathy because you know what it's like to fall and fight your way back up. And that makes you a better teammate, a better leader, a better human. Mentally strong people don't fear failure. They face it, they feel it, and then they learn from it. They use it as fuel. And that's what separates them. Not that they've never fallen, but that they never stop getting back up. In a world obsessed with speed, instant gratification, and overnight success, it's easy to fall into the trap of playing what's known as the finite game. That's the game where winning means achieving the next milestone, more followers, more money, more recognition. The finite game is all about outcomes, scoreboards, and comparison. And while it can offer short bursts of motivation, it rarely leads to long-term fulfillment or true mental strength. Mentally strong people don't play that game, they play the infinite game. The infinite game is not about beating others, it's about staying in the game. It's about continuous growth, purpose, and progress over perfection. The mentally strong don't define success by whether they've reached a destination. They define it by whether they're becoming better, more aligned, and more resilient each day. It's not about how fast they get there, it's about who they become along the way. When you play the infinite game, your mindset shifts in a powerful way. Setbacks don't feel like failure anymore, they feel like part of the process. You stop chasing validation and start seeking meaning. You stop looking for shortcuts and start building foundations. And this mindset isn't just philosophical, it's practical, because life isn't a straight line. It's full of twists, delays, failures, and moments where nothing makes sense. If your mental strength is built solely on hitting goals, what happens when those goals get delayed or fall apart? That's when most people give up. But the mentally strong keep going, not because everything is working, but because they're committed to the journey itself. Playing the infinite game means learning how to fall in love with consistency. It means showing up even when it's boring, even when there's no applause, even when progress feels invisible. That's where mental strength is really built, not in the highlight reels, but in the quiet, ordinary days when no one is watching. The days where discipline wins over motivation. And let's be honest, this kind of consistency is hard. It requires vision, requires patience, but above all, it requires belief. Belief in something greater than immediate results. The mentally strong believe that what they're building matters, even if it's taking longer than they hoped. They're not driven by the need to impress others. They're driven by a sense of purpose that doesn't fade with time. When you commit to the long game, you also free yourself from the toxicity of comparison. You understand that someone else's pace has nothing to do with your path. You stop measuring your worth against someone else's timeline. You're not trying to catch up. You're simply staying in alignment with your own growth, your own process, your own vision. This mindset also makes you more resilient to failure. In a finite game, failure is a dead end, but in the infinite game, failure is just feedback. It's a detour, not a defeat. Mentally strong people don't panic when things go wrong. They adjust, they recalibrate, they keep moving because they're not trying to win once. They're trying to keep growing always. And here's what's beautiful. When you stop obsessing over winning, you actually win more often. You gain clarity. You attract better opportunities. You build things that last because you're not chasing moments, you're building momentum. Mental strength isn't about sprinting, it's about enduring. It's about playing the infinite game with intention, with resilience, and with heart. So if you're feeling behind, lost, or discouraged, remember this. You haven't failed. You're just in the middle of the story. Stay in the game. There's a common misconception in our culture that to be strong, you have to look strong. That strength is about appearances, about seeming unbothered, in control, always confident. We've been sold the image of mental strength as someone who's stoic, unshaken, and constantly winning. But the truth is, real mental strength has very little to do with how things look on the outside. It's not a performance. It's not a posture, it's a quiet, steady internal alignment with who you are and what you value, especially when no one is watching. There's nothing wrong with confidence or composure, but when those things become masks, when they become ways to hide what's really going on beneath the surface, they stop being signs of strength and start becoming signs of fear. Fear of judgment, fear of being seen, fear of seeming weak. And when you're constantly trying to maintain a strong image, you're actually operating from a place of insecurity, not resilience. Mentally strong people don't chase the illusion of strength. They practice the reality of it. And that reality is often quiet. It looks like self-reflection, like owning your mistakes, like saying, I don't know, or I'm not okay, without feeling like it diminishes your worth, because it doesn't. If anything, it deepens it. The people who are truly strong are the ones who are real. They're grounded. They don't have to prove themselves constantly because they've already done the internal work. They've developed a kind of calm confidence that doesn't shout or boast. It doesn't need to dominate a room. It simply exists, and it's felt by everyone around them. You see, pretending to be strong is exhausting. It requires constant effort to hold up an image. And over time, that effort drains you. You start living for perception instead of purpose. But being real, being true to yourself, that gives you energy because there's no internal conflict, no dissonance, just alignment between who you are and how you show up. That's not to say mentally strong people don't feel pressure or insecurity. They do. The difference is they're not ruled by those feelings. They acknowledge them, they work through them, and they make choices based on their values, not their fears. They know that real strength isn't about pushing everything down. It's about facing it with honesty. This kind of authenticity also builds trust. When people see that you're willing to be real, not perform, they trust you more. They're drawn to you. Because in a world full of filters and facades, authenticity stands out. It becomes magnetic. It's not about being perfect. It's about being human. Mentally strong people understand that the goal isn't to be unshakable, it's to be resilient. Resilience means you can be shaken and still stand. You can feel doubt and still move forward. You can face failure and still choose to try again. That's what real strength looks like. Not invincibility, but endurance. And most importantly, real strength is deeply rooted in values. Mentally strong people live by a code. They know what they stand for. They know what matters to them, and they use those values to guide their decisions, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. That's what gives them clarity. That's what keeps them grounded in a noisy, chaotic world. So don't chase the appearance of strength. Don't waste energy trying to look the part. Instead, go inward, do the real work, build character, build resilience, build a life that's in alignment with who you truly are. Because the strongest people aren't the ones who seem unbreakable. They're the ones who are brave enough to be real.